Alright, good afternoon everybody. I'm learning Gemara Menachos, Mem Beis Amud Beis. And it says here, Sefer tefillin, Sefer Torah tefillin mezuzos, sheksavim seduki, kusi, ovid kechaved, ovid isha v'katan, murmur, pesulin, shenamar ukshartam, kol sheyeshnei b'kshira, yeshnei b'ksiva, kol she'ena b'kshira, ena b'ksiva. So basically it says that when you're talking about scribal arts, tefillin, mezuzahs, Sefer Torah tefillin mezuzahs that were written by a Sadducee, by a Kuthian, meaning a Samaritan, by a heathen, by a slave, by a woman, by a child, or by a heretic, they are unfit, as it says, and you should bind them and you should write them. By the tefillin and the mezuzahs. So the Gemara says, "Kol sheyeshnei b'kshira, yeshnei b'ksiva." Anybody who is obligated in tying the tefillin on themselves, they can write it. Meaning, even though a woman, for example, has to have a mezuzah on her door, but since she's not obligated to wear tefillin, she is not allowed to write tefillin, and she's also not allowed to write a mezuzah, even though she's obligated in the mitzvah of the mezuzah. But then it says, "Kol she'ena b'kshira, ena b'ksiva." So whoever does have this obligation of binding the tefillin and has the mitzvah of binding the tefillin, so they have also the mitzvah of writing the tefillin. So this is a refutation of the practice as done in Chabad, because in Chabad they go and put tefillin on people in the street who are heretics, who don't believe in the 13 principles of faith, might not even believe in God, but because their mother's Jewish, they'll put tefillin on any man whose mother was Jewish, or mother's mother was Jewish, something like that. They go put tefillin on them even though they're heretics. And so we see here that from this Gemara, and the thing is, Chabad, they're not going to put tefillin on a woman, and they're going to say that the Reform and the Conservative are wrong because they put tefillin on women, even though one might say that even if they don't have an obligation, it's not necessarily a sin to do so. There are opinions like that, or there are opinions that it is a sin to do so because it's beged ish. But since we see there's the comparison here, we see therefore that it's probably a sin to put tefillin on these heretics. Just because the mother happens to be Jewish doesn't mean that you go put tefillin on them, because it's actually a sin to do so, in addition to the issue of putting tefillin on someone who doesn't have a guf naki. It's also an issue, and you don't know if these people have a guf naki or not. There's all kinds of issues involved here, so you have to be educated with what you're dealing with, and not go and do wilde zachen like this. Go put tefillin on heretics, and they would never put tefillin on someone who's not Jewish. They would never put tefillin. They never put tefillin on a from Jewish woman. They wouldn't put tefillin on. But they put tefillin on heretics. It's a major problem. Now people are going to say, "Oh, Chazanish says that there's no such thing as a heretic these days. That the people, they would be considered what they call a tinnik shenishba, someone like a child who grew up not even knowing he's Jewish, and so therefore he's not considered a heretic." But the what do they call it? What's the name of the Brisker Rav? He said that Nebuch Napikoris is auch Napikoris. That someone who's unfortunately a heretic remains a heretic. Maybe they're not going to be punished for every sin that they commit because of their ignorance, and God has mercy on them. But that nonetheless, it doesn't mean that you could count them for a minyan, or that you could that you could put tefillin on them and all these things. And it's an insult to the tefillin in a certain sense to be putting the tefillin on the heretics, especially. You don't know if they have nikiyas haguf, they have to go to the bathroom or something. That's a separate issue. But in general, you have to, and a lot of people misunderstand what it means, a guf naki. It means that if someone has, they feel like they have to go to the bathroom, they're not allowed to put tefillin on. It's not, even if the outside of their body is totally clean, but it's about what's, and then I heard Lubavitcher say, "Oh, the tefillin macht for a guf naki." No, that's just ignorance. It doesn't, an ignorance of what the halacha is. So you have somebody on the street, you don't know. They might be rushing. They try to have to go to the bathroom. You're putting tefillin on them, so you're committing a sin. It's a bracha levatala. A lot of major issues there. So, the answer that they generally will give is that this is a type of kiruv to educate them what tefillin is. So even if this time they're not maybe fulfilling the mitzvah of tefillin, that's the answer I've gotten. But sof kol sof, they'll learn about the mitzvah of tefillin through this, and start putting on tefillin. So again, we have to find out what exactly is the parameters of this. Is this a person who believes in God? Instead of asking them, do you believe, is your brother Jewish? Ask them, do you believe there's one God? Do you believe that He gave us the Torah? Do you believe that the 13 principles of faith? These types of things. All right, if he's but the word here is a murmur. Murmur could mean even, it doesn't necessarily mean issues of faith. It could be a murmur l'teyeva. There's a lot of people that are called murmur, but maybe we will understand that it means either a murmur l'avodah zarah or an atheist, something like this. We have some of these an atheist. You can't put tefillin on him. You can't count him for a minyan. You can't, all these things, except Rav Moshe says that it could be for when it comes to Hadavar Shebekadusha, which is what we understand generally. You need a minyan to say Hadavar Shebekadusha. Maybe it could be that you have someone who is a Jewish heretic. They wouldn't count for Tefillah B'tzibur, but they would count for Hadavar Shebekadusha. You could still say Kedusha and Baruch Hu and so forth. But it's a big chiddush what Rav Moshe says. It's not pshat in Shulchan Aruch like that. Chacham Avadia, he says that you have someone, let's say they go to shul every Shabbos and they say Baruch Atah Hashem Mekadesh Shabbos. So then they're already considered as Shomer Shabbos because they're moida that the Rebbeinu Shalom is Mekadesh Shabbos. And even if they're driving to shul, which is an Aveira, they're not in the getter of what's called Goy L'chol Gedavar. And that makes sense as far as what the halachas are, that means because it's an issue of emunah. So if someone says the words that blessed art thou, O Lord, who sanctifies the Sabbath, and it would seem, even if they say it certainly in a conservative synagogue, maybe even a reform synagogue, that they would still be part of Klal Yisrael, and they would be considered a choyte, they'd be considered a sinner, but not a heretic necessarily. At least for this halacha, that would be that they couldn't count him for a minyan. Maybe some of the other issues, especially that the Reform deny the resurrection and they deny term in the Shemayim, and there are a lot of people who are part of the conservative movement also they deny term in the Shemayim. That's a separate issue. But then you have people who go to Orthodox shuls also. Where do we draw the line? The main thing really has to be is Dvarim Shebelev and Dvarim. Words in the heart are not words. And so, if someone professes a belief or expresses it through the recitation of our liturgy, meaning they say the brachas, they say Baruch Atah Hashem Mechayei HaMeisim, which is the problem with the Reform, is they changed the liturgy and removed Tchiyas HaMeisim from their liturgy. That is mamish apikorsis. The conservative, they changed the liturgy, but not in a heretical way, only in an ecumenical way, which is stupid, but it's not necessarily heretical. Meaning the professed faith of the conservative movement is Amunah of Klal Yisrael, is Al Derech Yisrael Saba. So to be educated, at what point does someone become mamish napikoris, and at what point is someone a choite and after a choite mechti, but not necessarily an apikoris. There's a nafkamina, because when you come to the apikoris is meridim lemala. So, at what point does someone be an apikoris? If you see someone stam in the street, before you put tefillin on them, you should ask them, do you believe in God? Do you believe that He gave us His word in the scripture, in the Torah, these types of things? In addition to, is your mother Jewish and all these things? Because then they're part of Hamcha. Meaning, you have a Yid who goes to shul every Shabbos, but maybe he doesn't put tefillin every day. Such a Yid, you should put tefillin on him, of course. That's, and I think that's what Mistama, when Lubavitcher Rebbe, Zechor Levrocha, Mistama, he meant Azelach Yidin. He didn't mean Azelach Havata Yidin, like, I saw a Lubavitcher Shliach putting tefillin on a galach because his mother was Jewish, a Roman Catholic priest in Salt Lake City. There's a picture, and he's putting tefillin on him, and then the sukkahs, he's taking a little of an esrog, and he's a galach. It's hard to say that such a person is part of Klal Yisrael when he's ordained as a Roman Catholic priest, but he's just happens his mother's Jewish. There could be places where they do it. That he could be called a murmur l'teyavin and not a murmur l'hachis. I'm thinking that Cardinal Lucier, who used to learn Gemara, and he would go to Minyan and say Kaddish for his father. Maybe he would be together a murmur l'teyavin and not a murmur l'hachis, and it wasn't his fault, because he was an orphan in the Holocaust. He became a priest, and then he woke up to Yiddishkeit, but he was already the cardinal. He couldn't give up such a position, but he was, he was someone who was proud of his Jewish heritage. Maybe that's that he's not called a murmur l'hachis, and certainly he was an ernster wie sie heißt es, a tinnik shenishbo. He was taka tinnik shenishbo. He was taken as a child and raised in the church. So, but still, Nebuchadnezzar Bikoris is Ochanak Bikoris. You can't be hefker with these type of things. You have to ask a dayan, to ask a rav, and know what you're dealing with. And in Chabad, they recognize that. It's nicht jeder sagt, was der Rebbe heißt. Man darf the dayan a rav to paskin and shilas, and it's not poshut. It's really not poshut. So this is what we're talking about here with putting on tefillin. You have to know what you're dealing with. You can't mekenish zan wild. You have to follow the right way. So thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, comment, and we'll see you later.